We're ready to roll.
Okay, Vice Chair Belknap, you're there you've got everything up on your screen?
Got it up and printed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning. Welcome to our February 4th Utah State Board of Education board meeting and also the USDB governing board meeting. Before we get started, I want to welcome, it's like we have all our board members here. We'll still do a roll call vote. So board members be ready, and want to welcome everyone that's joined us virtually. We have a big day, big agenda. Looking forward to the betterments that will move forward this day. Let's do the roll call vote first. So we'll make sure your mics are working. And Vice Chair Belknap?
Roll call count, yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Davis?
Here.
Member Earl?
Yes.
Member Hanson?
Good morning.
Morning. Member Hymas?
Here.
Member Straight?
Yes.
Member Lear?
Here.
Member Cannon?
Good morning, everyone.
Member Hart?
Here.
Member Klein?
I'm here.
Okay. Member Moss?
Here.
Member Booth?
Good to be here.
Member Norton?
Here.
Okay, all present. Okay, before we get in to our agenda, I need to read the statement. As authorized by Utah Code 52-4, this meeting is being held electronically without an anchor location to reduce the risk to health and safety from COVID-19 by limiting the frequency of in-person meetings. Okay, let's get right into our agenda. Next, we'll have our board member message. Vice Chair Davis.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, board members and virtual visitors. I had to write this one down. I outlined this welcome message over a week ago. It felt like it was writing itself and haunted me day and night. It was done before news outlets and our inboxes exploded, asking us to remove a board member, then exploded again, asking us to retain said board member. Please, to all of you, we see you and we hear you, but we have zero legal authority to do either. I repeat, we have zero legal authority to remove or retain a board member. But what is really at the heart of all of the angst? I've been reaching out to people on both sides to try to better understand where they are coming from. I could talk about my findings for several hours, but will only share a few insights gleaned from listening. I'm fully aware that my perception lies somewhere in relation to reality and am committed to continued learning. Part of these concerns, I think, come with different definitions for different words, and perhaps we as a board need to just start from the beginning and look at the definitions in our own strategic plans and our own documents and define words the way that our board agrees upon. Our Access Advisory Group, tasked with giving us recommendations to make things better for kids who are at risk of academic failure and/or emotional health, has asked us to do some things in this space. They have not dictated to us all the particulars. That is yet for the board to decide. I repeat, that is yet for the board to decide. But it makes some nervous because they feel that Access is asking for training in critical race theory. They fear that their teachers and students will be trained to believe that all laws are racist and that all white people are inherently racist, whether they know it or not. And that their children will go to school and be made to feel guilty for being born with white skin. Hear this now. I do not want any child to be made to feel anything less than the beautiful person that he or she is for any color of skin, but some currently do. So how do we change that without making the other kids feel guilty for something they have not yet and hopefully will never do. These are the conversations that are yet to be had. We have started the discussion surrounding race with one substantive vote. We voted unanimously on a document called Resolution Denouncing Racism and Embracing Equity in Utah Schools, which includes such quotes as USPE firmly denounces racism in any form in our schools and in our education system and embraces principles of equity and justice for all. All of our policies, programs, and activities shall promote unity and civility among diverse groups. The Utah State Board of Education commits to identify and examine issues of race, ethnicity, and color and the effect they have on education system and community to understand and correct any inequities. Promoting good character is one defense against racism, and many more statements in this resolution. We have taken action only on this, and we did it unanimously. Some say that those who advocate for greater racial equity want to erase the founding fathers and history of the Constitution. However, former board member Sean Newell advocated for greater racial equity, but also voted to keep founding documents not only on our social studies curriculum, but also in our language arts curriculum. So that doesn't sound to me like a person who wants to erase constitutional principles or paint all the founding fathers as evil people. So I called and asked his intent directly, and his answer was no, and that every part of our history is important. But it is also important for students to know that barriers have existed for some in our history. So can we do this while at the same time helping students to understand that this country is the first place where the governed actually had a say in the government, and that work was monumental? Yes, of course we can. We can because the two are not mutually exclusive. Both are important. Former board member Newell said, "You have to be able to include people into a space where you can be open and honest with each other." We are asking when we create policy that we take into consideration others who might fall outside our normal lens. But this goes both ways. Some say that those who advocate against critical race theory are racist and speaking only from white privilege experience. However, when I dig in and ask more questions of and listen to these folks, I hear things such as this from a constituent named Alicia who opposes critical race theory. She said, "We need to address this issue thoughtfully and respectfully as we work together to find solutions. I think it's also very helpful for us to keep in mind that we share the common goal of working to eradicate racism and build a society which upholds liberty and justice for all. I think the best way forward is to use science and reason to identify specific areas where we're failing to live up to our liberal ideas like technology access, resource allocation, discipline, etc. in our schools. We need to develop specific strategies to address those issues and then objectively measure the impact of those efforts so we can continue to progress." Well, this is a person who is against critical race theory, but she doesn't sound like a person to me at all to be against people of color. Last week, Congressman Burgess Owens asked if he could come to my house to ask some education questions. While here, he said he always was taught by his parents that he could work 3 times as hard as anyone to achieve the same things. But he said his focus also was on access. He said, like on students living in the rural area who can't access the internet, or a child living in the middle of a city with internet access everywhere but doesn't have the money to buy it. He said that his dad got a bachelor's degree, but because of Jim Crow laws, he couldn't go beyond that. He had recently found a bunch of those rejection letters in a box. He said, but then around the 50s came a white man in power who changed the rules. And just like that, my dad was able to access higher degrees, and he did. Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. A white man in power. We are white people in policy. We have a responsibility to examine the issues of race and those with other historic barriers and see if and where betterments could be made in our educational system. I'm going to share a part of my life that I typically keep private. When my daughter Katie was 3 years old, her dad chose a different road away from our family. She was 3 and she cried herself to sleep every night for a year. Her dad said, "Kids are resilient, she will be fine." He was wrong. This is why I had to write this one out. When he left, we were drowning in debt and his income went away with him. Though it was offered, I never took money from government or church or anyone else because I had a degree. But times were hard. We ate pancakes for dinner every night for months until I was able to get a full-time teaching job. I don't pretend that my situation was harder than others because I know some don't even have pancakes. When I started teaching full-time, things were more hopeful, but I was working in Utah County and living on the border of Salt Lake and West Valley. My neighborhood was on the news often. We had a few murders and drug busts were regular. There was an officer who would park on our fence and read the newspaper waiting. And guys would hop the fence from the apartment complex next door, and then he would wait and catch them on the other side of the fence. I worked a night job on top of the day job to pay the bills, especially daycare, which is ridiculously expensive. And I went to school the other nights to someday buy a home and make a better life for my daughter. There were times at night on the way home from all of this that we were so tired that I couldn't even bring myself to get Katie out of the car and walk all the way to the back corner of the grocery store to buy a gallon of milk. Why do they have to make milk so inaccessible for tired people, I would wonder? I had dreams of starting a drive-through for single moms that sold a loaf of bread, a gallon of milk, and a stick of butter. There were some nights when I just couldn't climb Mount Everest to get to the milk. So I would drive through the Wendy's drive-through and buy that little half pint of milk so my daughter would have milk to drink or put on her cereal. Katie didn't enter kindergarten having the oral language base she needed. It felt like we were barely surviving. In the first grade, she was significantly behind her peers. The school provided a reading recovery, a one-on-one training with a specialist. I didn't ask for this, but a caring educator saw a need and filled it. I called them miracle workers. It gave her the boost she needed to get through elementary school. In junior high school, the counselor, who I then now refer to as our angel, gave her some extra time and care and attention. She invited her to be part of a group that met regularly for kids of divorced parents, so Katie wouldn't feel that she was the only one suffering. Every time her dad would come into town and then leave again, Katie would sob for the rest of the night. The counselor would take time with her in her office to deal with the roller coaster of emotions. I'm not exaggerating when I say she saved her life. Not to mention providing a safe place for her emotionally so that she could go back to class and focus on learning. She gave her this support so there was a bit more equity so she could have access to the opportunity to learn academically. I was a single mom for about 7 years. During that time, I did get my master's degree in education leadership and policy and spent time working in education administration, and I loved it. One of the moms where I was a principal, she was on the PTA and she set me up with her brother. And let's just say I owe PTA big time now. He is the love of my life. We married and had 2 babies. And yes, I'm old and I've made my own grandkids. But I had the chance to be a stay-at-home mom and I grabbed it. It's a joy to have time to parent, read stories, find quality preschools, go on field trips to museums, and take trips to national parks and more. These 2 kids both entered kindergarten already reading. My 6th grade son won Battle of the Books and is reading on an 11th grade reading level. My daughter won a first place prize in the state science fair last year. They each play instruments and they are active in community sports. I don't tell you this so you will think well of my kids, but to point out that I'm the same person raising these 2 kids as I was raising my Katie, who was 23 years old and still suffering in a variety of ways. I am the same parent with the beliefs, dreams, love, and desires. The difference between her childhood, Katie's childhood, and the other 2 childhoods is trauma, time, money, emotional bandwidth, and, well, milk. I now always have a gallon of milk in my refrigerator and an extra gallon waiting in the basement refrigerator in case we run out. Imagine that. 2 refrigerators. 2 refrigerators and 2 gallons of milk. Who would have thought? There are a lot of students in our state who are at risk of academic failure through no fault of their own, just like my Katie was. We don't help them by lowering the bar, but by increasing the supports. I know we can agree on helping kids have the resources they need to have the opportunity to fulfill the measure of their potential, not to become the same as every other person, but to reach their own individual stars. Can we stop drowning in the circuitous communications that keep us from doing the heavy lifting for kids? Can we at least start to listen to each other without the intent assumptions? I know there are things we agree on. I believe that every member of this board wants to eradicate racism, but has different opinions on how to go about doing it. I believe every member wants children to feel safe from bullying at school, no matter their race, gender, ability, religion, economic status, or parents' political persuasions. I believe every member of this board would give the shirt off his or her back for a child in need. We won't be asked to give our shirt. We will be asked to give our focus. We will be asked to give our hearts and our heads in building bridges of understanding and coalescing around the things we agree on, disagreeing rationally and civilly, and making policy progress for all children to access opportunities to become their individual best. No more distractions. Let's get to work, and welcome to board meeting.
Thank you, Vice Chair Davis, for sharing your story and then also your message. Thank you. Next on our agenda is employee recognition. As many of you know, this is where the superintendent takes point and spotlights the employee of the month within USBE. This is a first for me, or first that I've seen something like this happen, but the membership or the employees at USBE have a committee, and names are submitted, and committee reviews this, and it is my pleasure to introduce the employee of the month nomination for Superintendent Dixon. So she's the employee, and so I have a little something to read, and it was fun recognizing her. And here's some pictures on your screen of when she was made aware of this. I don't know if my wife will approve of my shirt and tie and vest when I was on this to have this before you, but I'll ask for forgiveness later. So this is all about Superintendent Dixon, and the write-up. I want to just share a quick write-up that is part of the description of the nomination. Superintendent Dixon has led the public education community through the COVID-19 pandemic like few individuals in the state would be able to do. She's been calm, thoughtful, and also defended the needs of both students and educators while trying to balance the political and social issues that arisen around the pandemic and public education. Then, adding the cultural responsive workplace initiative simply demonstrates that not only is she an amazing leader, but she's compassionate and a caring human. She's regarded nationally as a superior superintendent, but we don't need them to tell us that because we see it in ourselves every day. We are so lucky to be led by such a dedicated and motivated individual. In one of the most challenging years in the history of public education, Utah has been safe under the guidance of her love. So it's my pleasure to introduce you, board members, to the USBE Employee of the Month, our Superintendent Dixon. I don't know what we do now. Usually, I guess we can go right to this. Dr. Dixon, do you have a comment on receiving this recognition? I do know there's some privileged parking spots that you get to have for the month, but I understand there's plenty to choose from. So, but I think there is that benefit that comes for this month. Do you have anything to share? Are you with us?
Well,
Sure.
our internet is very spotty here in the office, so it's probably just as well because I think I cried through the whole ceremony. So I just, we are a team here, and I just stand on the shoulders of 320 amazing individuals who are spread all over the valley in their homes. And I just want to thank our amazing staff. If I get any recognition, it's because I surround myself with the very best people. So this is really a shout out to all of our staff, and I might be the figurehead, but we're a team. So thank you so much for this honor and for the parking place. I'll just, it's pretty wide open out there right now, but more than anything, I just appreciate employees who recognize that it is a hard year. We're all in this together, and I just happen to be fortunate enough to stand out in front as a figurehead for all of the amazing work that goes on in this state. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next, we'll go to our education highlight, and Jeff Van Holten, our Public Affairs Director, are you going to introduce Murray?
Yes, very briefly. And Jerry, if you can give sharing rights to Missy Hamilton and Jason Eyre, or Jason Eyre, if I said that incorrectly, I apologize. They are going to give a quick highlight for you all on the amazing work they have done during COVID-19 to reach out to families in need, especially with tech needs and issues in that area. We'll pass it over to Missy and Jason.
Thank you so much. I am Missy Hamilton. I am the Director of Technology and Elementary Teaching and Learning, and I am super humble to be following such a great introduction by one of my educational heroes in Dr. Dixon. I hope someday to grow up to be just like her. So thank you for the opportunity to highlight the fantastic work that we're doing in Murray. I'm here with Jason Eyre, our Technology Coordinator, and much like Dr. Dixon, I'm just simply, I lead a great team and amazing people. So I want to share with you what happened back in March when we went out for COVID. We kind of saw the writing on the wall. We started preparing for digital learning days. And then when we went out, and of course, we went out the day before, it took us a couple of hours to get 6,500 Chromebooks out to kids. And the very next morning, we were streaming and we were ready to roll. And then we started immediately began distributing Chromebooks or started gathering data on which kids were accessing their learning and why, and which kids weren't and why, and where they were. So as we started gathering that data, we also started mapping. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And when we did, let's see, it says that you cannot share screen while the other participant is sharing. So I think whoever is sharing, if they can stop sharing, great, thank you. So we started to map that data, and I just want to make sure, can you see the YouTube or the Google Earth map?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So what you see here is all of the students in Murray City School District, and I zoomed way out. You can see Google needs an update because you only see Jordan School District here. So imagine canyons, and then they also flipped Salt Lake City School District and Granite School District. But you can see here in Murray School District, we have students out in Tooele, we have students in Utah County, and we also have students clear up in Ogden and Weber County. So we have a very unique situation, even though we are a small pocket. All of those orange dots represent students and families, and then the purple dots represent some of our schools. So you'll see here, this is the I-15 corridor. This is the IMC campus here. This is Murray High School in purple and Hillcrest Junior High in purple. And so when we started getting the data in of which students were connecting and why, we started to map that. And if you look at this, I'm going to try and pull up a single family home. When you click on this dot, this is a family that has 2 students. And when you click on that, what we were able to drill down to is this is a Hispanic student with English as the home language. And they are not economically disadvantaged. However, as the data started to flow in, and I'm going to roll my map up to the northern part of Murray City School District, because this is where this conglomeration of housing development, as well as right in here by Horizon Elementary, that's when we started noticing that many of these students were not connecting. When we started asking why, we recognized that they did not have access to very good bandwidth of internet. So what we did, and by we, I mean our technology team, everybody was out of Murray High School, so we didn't need the wireless access points there. So our technology team took down the wireless access points. We worked with the property owners in this property housing development, and we hung wireless access points inside of that property development. And what we had was students that were now able to access internet to be able to continue their learning at high levels. And we worked with Utopia to turn up the speeds and things like that. So if you can imagine these students, and I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit more. And I'm going to click on this. So the 1 dot is not a home, it's an apartment building. So that home does not have that many kids, right? So that is an apartment unit with a lot of students. And when we clicked on that, what we did find was we had most of these students were economically disadvantaged, which for us, we needed to level that playing field and get them high-speed internet. So we took down those wireless access points and started hanging them there and turned up the speeds. That was the easy part. And so then we wanted to be really thoughtful about what we wanted to do to make sure that we put a proverbial blanket around Murray City School District so that all of our students had access to high-speed internet. And enter Jason Eyre with his amazing technology skills and his connections across the technology community. And rather than throw hotspots out to students and say, go ahead and connect, here's a hotspot for you, we wanted to be really deliberate about which students we targeted and what devices we gave them so that we could basically service all of the students in this map. So I'm going to shift over to Jason so that he can share with you what we were able to do with USBE funds from broadband, as well as working with UETN and our Murray City School District Foundation. Jason?
Thanks, Missy, and I'll wait for the screen sharing to come so I can actually make it entertaining and show you things as well as me just talking. Just a quick introduction. My name's Jason Eyre. I'm the Technology Department Coordinator here at Murray City School District. I've been here for just over 3 years. And today we're going to talk about a couple of things that came together. They're a vision that's been happening for many years with the help of many people, not just the State Office of Education, but UETN. And as Missy mentioned, Utopia helped us a ton. I didn't know how to do this geocoding that led to those dots on the map that Missy talked about until I was in a meeting with Utopia and I said, I really wish I could do this. And they gave me some quick instructions, and a few days later, we were understanding and looking at our student populations and working with them in ways we never had before. I also, before I jump into this, I want to acknowledge other people who helped us at the first of the pandemic. One of those companies was Comcast. We didn't have the chance to immediately light up wireless access or other technologies in many parts of our district, and we were able to lean on low-income programs that Comcast had put into place, and we were able to connect all but 13% of our students to the internet last year. And the apartment building that Missy talked about, the landlord had to give us permission, and the landlord did give us permission. It was a place that Comcast couldn't reach with their program because there were some prior arrangements in place, and that's where Utopia stepped up and helped us in a matter of days, which is a miracle when you're trying to do internet work and bring up circuits and things, especially in a pandemic, but they were able to quickly bring it up. It's also important to note that the Fire Clay complex that Missy talked about, the Brickgate complex, didn't have really good cellular access. They're kind of in a cellular dead zone. And it was strange that I knew that because of conversations I'd had with the police department. And so it's interesting how in a small community, knowing your neighbors and working together, even though we're in an inner city rural setting, it's amazing how this type of information can help solve problems quickly. And in the pandemic, everything we've done, as good as our intentions have had to be mostly response, because just as the virus is changing, our challenges are changing. But I want to show you what we've done to help us be more nimble and understand that. So the first thing I want to share on my screen, you're seeing actually two heat maps converge together. The pandemic taught us a couple of things. We had always been focused, as the board member said earlier, about students in a rural setting or even an urban setting that can't get internet access for whatever reason. Usually the most simple reason is economic challenge. And if you look at the blurred red map, big red blobs on our map, that's economic challenge. And unfortunately, we have access to that data through our free and reduced lunch program and our Aspire system that the state office does a great job on. So we took our data from Aspire and this is actually a Microsoft product, Power BI, and we were able to create two different heat maps because in the pandemic, the second problem we learned about that we would have never anticipated was that even families with good internet still struggled in the pandemic. The pandemic brought mom and dad home from work. It brought a situation where everyone was stuck together for long periods of time, and sometimes those younger siblings needed to be able to stream some little kid shows or watch something on TV to keep them entertained as well, because we couldn't really go outside and play together even in parts of it, both with the weather and the pandemic itself. And so we were seeing challenges in internet use happening so differently in houses that we realized that households with 3 or more students, someone seemed like they couldn't make it to class, so to speak, because the internet couldn't support mom, dad, streaming and Zooming all at the same time. And it seemed like there was always one kid, a middle kid probably, if we were to live with some other jokes, probably was the one who got kicked off somehow. Each day, whether the internet kicked them off or the other siblings said, let me learn or let me do this or those kind of things. And so we realized we also needed to put a blanket over those larger households and get them more bandwidth, even within good internet connections. And so the little dots you see on the map that are a little bit clearer, those are our households that are higher density with 3 or more kids. So what we are doing is we're putting up our LTE antennas, and as we're modeling, and I think I have a picture here of the modeling. Let me just bring that up real quick for you. The great thing with the technology we're using is that we can take and figure out where to put our radios and figure out how to aim them. You can see these little triangles. That's how the radios are reaching the houses. And then the colors are the different levels of signal, just like you would see a cellular provider doing. We are bringing up radios almost every day, additional radios to fill out our network later this month. And we were able to start by prioritizing those economic need places. But we've made some pretty bold statements that we are going to reach the students in our district. And we're fortunate because the size of our district and the topography, we're figuring out how to get down into some hillsides and across some different areas, across a couple of freeways. But we're very confident, and the data is showing us that we're going to be able to do this as we get the rest of our radios installed. the interesting thing is there's some other side effects of having this data heat mapped and having an understanding of our student population. During the pandemic, we've struggled to find certain students, students especially who have multiple challenges. And so we took and used a different modeling tool from Google. This is a product called Data Studio. It's available free to the districts. And to do the mapping, we pay about 15 cents a month to Google Cloud for the processing that does this. But we were able to take this same mapping technology that Missy showed you, where you could look at individual students and look at our students in aggregate and start to look at things. So for example, if we want to see where the students live at this school, everything on this is active. So I can push buttons and watch the map change. This is where students in our preschool live. And you can see that there's some different colors because we have three preschoolers from 1 or 2 houses. As you can see, they're spread about Salt Lake. I can turn these on and off. The power of this technology and looking at our data and being able to analyze it comes as we start to mix and match the multiple things. For example, this particular situation lets us look by school, it lets us look by home language, it lets us look by race, and it lets us look by ethnicity. And quickly we can see where our Hispanic population lives. We can see where they're spread out through our schools. And I can tell you that it's amazing to sit and learn about your population this way. Some of the reasons why, and I'm just going to turn it back off, but some of the reasons why this is important is that it's helped us know where to send people. And especially with language, it's helped us know where to send interpreters and how to kind of set their drives up, because there's just some times when we've had to get to a student's house. I'm not going to bore you too much with playing with this, but we've taken it and actually spread it out into some of the other intersectionality type challenges, whether it's English that isn't language, sometimes it might be grade level or age, ethnicity, economic advantage or disadvantage, race. We even can look at students that come from other districts and see how they fit into this equation and where they fit on the map. English language learners, homelessness, each of these things. And I'll just do one example for you. We can quickly now see the 7 students that speak Japanese. We can see that there's actually some Hispanic students there, but we can see the race is Asian and multiple. Their home district, they're all from Murray. 100% economically disadvantaged, which wouldn't be a thing you would normally think, maybe with some other preconceived notions. Here's how they spread out between our grades, and here's where they live. And you can see the different dots and see that they're spread pretty evenly throughout our district. But now we know that we can send someone with that language skill. But the amazing thing is we can turn on multiples of these to do analysis and start to see where those intersections are and start to identify our even more vulnerable populations and then distribute services to them. So we're excited with not just having technology by a one-to-one program that puts devices in students' hands, having internet access that blankets those devices with consistent internet coverage that we can track and watch. And if it goes down, we can ask them if they unplugged it and they're not engaging, or we can ask them if there's a problem and troubleshoot and move antennas for it. But also, we're trying to find the intersectional challenges that are in these kids' lives and point services, focuses, social workers, all the other amazing things the state has done for us in the last couple of years to really engage people, not just engaging students, but engaging people to help our students. So I appreciate the time today. I'm grateful for data privacy, for our Aspire team, for so many of the teams at the state office that help us do what we do as a small district. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude. Missy, do you have any closing thoughts as I stop sharing?
I don't. Thank you so much for all of the state office for all of their support and both fiduciary and otherwise. So
thank you.
Well, thank you, Jason. Is it Airy? Did I get that right? I got the Jason right. And
So,
Miss Hamilton.
So it's actually pronounced Jason Eyre, like the novel Jane Eyre. My mom's a very proud English teacher, and some of you may know her merrily, but we're pretty proud to be the heirs, and we know who changed it to Eyre.
Yes, okay. And I know you guys are getting a lot of attention statewide and even nationally. People are saying, okay, what did they do and how are they doing it? So thank you for sharing. I'm sure if we open this up to board members, and that we'll be here for we'll be on this topic for about another hour or so. But thank you so much. You are for being our education highlight and the example that you're setting and the presentation today. So keep up the great work. Thank you.